Oh, ooh. All right, y'all. So I am back. Let's go ahead and dive back into this. Yesterday, we ran into a slew of problems with the. I can't hear myself, so, before I really take off, I want to just do a sound check. Usually, I can hear myself through my headphones, and can't hear myself, so I want to just check on that. Yeah, something's going on here. So just give me a second. Before I really take off, I want to just do a sound check. Oh, okay. So I think we're good. Whatever it is, it's just my problem, so you guys can hear me. So yesterday, again, we had a slew of problems, mostly revolving around us trying to get our user to get that email, and I actually figured out the problem. And the problem wasn't even the code. So let me go over to this email template. So what happened is I used a custom template. So that template that we were creating yesterday. So this is my YouTube channel. If you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and check it out. Look me up by my name, William Ennals, and I'd be happy to connect with you further. So this is at the end of a very long search and um, learning process. But I did figure it out. So the way this thing works is, let me just continue closing out these tabs because it's quite a bit. So I probably should have left my email open, but here we have it here, right? Our email template. Okay, there we go. This email template that we created in SendGrid has this data that we have to provide. For instance, we have our subject, we have our, where is it? Um, and then when we go over to this build section, we also have our stuff over here that'll show up as HTML. And the biggest thing was this button here wasn't working. Actually, we were just getting a 400 error in altogether. And I believe, believe it or not, I missed a comma in here somewhere. I think it was right here. I think I was missing like the ending quote and the comma, and that wasn't working. But I just want to go over this now that I have it in place. So two from all pretty, we already got that. Subject is actually no longer in here. We'll have to provide our subject down in this dynamic template data because they're using something called handlebars in on SendGrid, and that's how they're taking the pictures and the kind of design stuff that we created, and they're turning that into the template that we see here. So I just wanted to go over this, and only thing I did here was I uploaded my images. You guys saw all that stuff. But on this button here, if I click on it, I had to use this URL. I changed this button URL to this specific tag here, and I was able to test it looking at the preview because I had it direct people to Facebook. And so when you click this button, actually, if you hover over it, you can actually see what well, you can't. I'm trying to point to it like you can see down here, right? If you look here, when I hover over the button, it shows you exactly what it's linked to. So now when I see this, I know that my button works, and that's pretty much what you can do to verify. So I didn't have to change much to get that going, and that was pretty much it. And then the next thing that I had to do was I had to grab this template ID right here. So this D all the way down. And I had to copy that. And it doesn't really matter that you can see mine because you don't have my API key. So you can't just grab my template. But I mean, with this particular setup, I mean, even if you did steal my template, whatever, right? It's no harm done. It doesn't damage me. So now you have the two from template ID that I was just telling you about. So this links to the template. So and then that's why we needed this dynamic template data because the type of template that we have when you look over here, this is a dynamic version. It's in the dynamic templates. And all that means is exactly that. It's dynamic, so the information can change. This URL will change depending on the token. The subject will change. I just wanted to have it there because I wanted to have a little bit more control over the subject. Maybe I might change it later, and I didn't want to have to have it set up any particular way. That's pretty much it. There's nothing really big about that. And I believe that this should be saved. I haven't actually tested doing it this way, so I'm just gonna save this now that I changed it, because in my previous attempts, in my email, you'll see that there's actually no subject. Here we go. You see there's no subject here. And the reason being is more than likely because I didn't have it done correctly. So now that's all good. And there's one other thing that I want to talk about that is important. So over here in my database, you see there's a user here. What I did was I wrote a this is a more advanced database thing that I'm about to go over. So on the model, right, I had a big kind of discussion mentally about how I should handle my users accepting being added to my sorry, I had Postman on another screen and I thought my stream was screwed up. But I had, excuse me, um, my biggest issue was that, hey, when you look at our router, we go ahead and we create our subscriber in our database. When you generate the token, when we look at the code for it, I thought that would work. When you look at the code for generate token, we save our user to the database, so it's in our database even if they haven't confirmed or not. So for me, I was like, wait, what if they send it to an email address that doesn't exist? Or let's say they accidentally type their email in wrong, or the latter, they just never accept it they never choose to be a subscriber on my for my website. And I didn't want to inconvenience users, but I also didn't want to store unnecessary data in my database. So what I did was I was able to actually tap into MongoDB directly and utilize some things that MongoDB has to offer. And that's what you're seeing down here. So what I did was I used the model because when you use the model here, you can access something that's called a collection. And how the way I believe this works is once you have the collection, it's saying all of those documents that are in there, right? So now it's saying create an index, and it's creating an index of and don't give me to I don't really understand what they say create index. It just means they're shortlisting some specific documents, right? So think of it that way. And this is actually a MongoDB operation, as you can see here. And what this does is we're taking, I honestly don't really know what this means either. But when you look at the MongoDB documentation, which this should direct us to, yep, um, we'll see that this is the syntax that we have to use to get this thing to do what we want it to do. But I'll continue running through it, and then we'll go look at the docs. So pretty much all I'm saying is I want to grab this index for created at, and it's a time, it's a date. It has to be a date, so you can't use it on. Well, I'm not gonna say you can't, but I don't believe you can do what I'm trying to do with this. So what I'm trying to do is take the date that that the person created their subscriber user, and I want my I want my database to run an operation to delete any any subscriber that doesn't confirm, and that's what we're doing here. So it's saying, based on this created index, any subscriber that doesn't confirm within and this is seconds, so 60 seconds is a minute, times 60 is an hour, times 72 is 3 days, because there's 72 hours, 24 hours in a day, times 3, there's your math lesson. And so after 3 days, if you don't confirm, you're going to be removed from the database. And I tested this by just using 60 seconds. And a little gotcha here is that if you're using 60 seconds, it might actually take 2 minutes before that user is moved, because MongoDB runs this operation every 60 seconds. So and you don't know when exactly it last ran. So at worst case scenario, it's gonna you're gonna have an extra 60 seconds in there before your data is removed. So and that's what this thing here is, a partial filter expression. And all it does is, instead of creating an index for all of the data we have in there, it's only going to index the data where where the subscriber hasn't confirmed. And what did I change in here? I just removed the space. That's fine. Um, and that's it really. I mean, that's all we had to do. Um, so now when I go into Robo, actually, I have to delete this user in order for this to work. But I want to keep this user in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Postman, and I'm going to take advantage of my alternate email address, and I'm going to send that there. So I'm going to send that to the email I just actually linked to my YouTube.tv. So what I'm going to do is I want this user to, I want to subscribe with this account, right? So I'm going to send this off, and we get our 201 message. So we know that this is working. So and I just got my email, my phone vibrated, and I can't actually pick it up from my phone because we are linked. Because I don't have the server live to be accessed through the internet. It has to be this local server that I have here. So look at that, right in my email, I get this thing here. And when we go into our database, and if we refresh it, you see we have 2 users in there, and you see that this confirmed is actually false. If I go back to my email and I click on this button, we get took right to this page here. And this is actually a good this is actually what we're supposed to see. I don't have anything rendering on this page. I don't have my front end built yet. So that's why we see this white screen. And the fact that we're not seeing any error message just tells us, hey, that was successful. And now when we go back into our database, we should see that our confirmed is now true. And that's what we want. So that and that's it really. There is some other email stuff that I do want to do. For instance, there's other email operations that I want to do for creating the blogs, right? When I create a blog, I want to send an email. But right at this very second, I don't want to do that because I don't know. To be honest, I just don't know how I want to design it. So I don't want to waste another. I don't want to say waste because it's not wasteful. It's that's what I want. I just don't want to take too much time doing that. The other thing that I want to do also is to confirm after I send this. After you do the confirmation email, the user confirms. I was thinking to have maybe like another. Well, I think it's a little bit tedious to have the users, have another email sent to them to say, hey, you've been, subscribed or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, never mind on that. But there'll be a screen that they'll be directed to that just lets them know that they have been added. So that way I don't have to use another email. I can just use that redirect route that they'll have, and that'll be their confirmation page. And it'll just say, just let them know. So what'll happen is we'll be doing the same thing on our post router, right? When we create our post and it saves, we want to send emails out to, but this time it'll be it'll be something that maybe like a function called alert subscribers. So right after we save, we'll have our email go out to our subscribers to say, hey, William released a new post, blah blah blah, title, maybe some kind of design for it. And that's really the tedious part. Sending the email up is easy. The design is the part that I want to take my time with, and I'll actually save that to make it like another front end kind of thing, because technically it is a front end operation even though I use the back end to send it. But now that I know how SendGrid works, I want to try to keep moving forward because there's a lot going on here. Um, but you can drop down to our users. Everything is working fine, right? Outside of the emails, and then actually this project might actually look a lot different too once I have the front end built, which is why I don't want to go too deep just yet. This is the MVP, which is going to be the first representation of my website that I create. um, I'm almost 100% certain that once I have the website live, I'll be releasing new versions maybe every 2 to 4 months. I say I start 2 and then bump it to 4 because work life. I don't this is gonna be an ongoing process maintaining my website. So I know that every now and again I'll find something that I want to change or something that I want to add to it, and that I'll have that timeline to do that. That'll also give me time to work on some delivery pipeline, and pipeline, think oil, just a facility of getting from one point to another. In terms of when I have these new releases, I want some things to happen automatically. For instance, testing, and make sure that the new stuff that I put in there doesn't break the website as it is before. And also I want to make sure that it doesn't. I want to make sure that that the new capabilities that I add work as intended. So, with that being said, we are now done with the back end. There's really not much more that we can do here. And since I'm not too familiar with how my front end is going to look, because I haven't used the tiny MCE API just yet. And as you can see with these APIs, anything can go wrong if you aren't prepared to store it right. So there's this tiny MCE thing that I want to use to actually create these posts. And I actually think what's going to happen is that all of this stuff here, all of this is going to end up being compressed into one thing, and it's going to be maybe a string because it's going to be an HTML thing. So we'll be dropping that directly into wherever it needs to be. But it's actually it's going to be a little bit more complicated than that, because there'll be fields like the title and all that other stuff that we'll have to send. So that's that. So that's it for the back end for right now. So we're going to jump over and do some testing. And the reason why we want to test is because, as you saw, the only other way we have of testing our stuff is Postman. And as you see, it's very manual. You have to go in, you have to manually hit the buttons, you have to send it, you have to copy the IDs and all that kind of stuff. And who wants to do that every time? Especially if, let's say, I give my code to somebody else. They may not know to do that, or they may just, if something breaks, they won't know what broke. So we're going to go ahead and spend some time on testing. So now I'm just going to create a new directory called test, and this is how we'll test. If I'm not mistaken, we have in our test, we don't have to test our models directly, because we'll be doing that all through our routers. So in order to test, we're going to have to do a few things. We're going to first create another environment file, and this one, it doesn't matter if you guys see it, because it'll be test.env, right? So we're going to create this test.env file, and the only thing I'm going to add in here for right now is going to be the port, and then be port 3000. I do need the JSON web token. So it'll be JWT underscore secret key. I don't need this because and this would just be, you know, at this point it doesn't really matter. This is, you know, this is, I'll do this, a test. And it doesn't really matter what you put in there. You can, you know, you can make it have stuff in there if you want it to be a little bit more dynamic. And the only thing I'm checking here is to make sure I'm not missing any other information. I actually won't need my SunGrid API key because I'm not actually going to send that off. Because I don't want to send emails to. I don't want to actually send the email and utilize the resource. I just want to send, you know, that I just want to have the ability to send this. Another thing that I'll have to do in here is I believe I need to create a access to my database. And right here we have our database here locally that we test. And I don't want to have this database what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want this database to be I don't want it to be utilizing the same environment for test and development, because maybe while I'm trying to add something new in, I need the database, and when I do tests, I'm going to be clearing the database, adding stuff in, pulling it out, and doing a lot of manipulations to it. So I don't want those two to be tied to each other. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to need a refresher for this, because I don't remember off the top of my head all the setup that I need. So I'm just going to go back to Udemy. And I'll have more videos later about the Udemy courses and the all the other resources that I've used. But you can actually see here which course I'm using. So you know, if you're really interested, you'll look it up and you'll find it. But I'm really just here for the tests here, and I just want to get that set up. Where is it? I believe I was looking for just set up and tear down.
Something along the lines of should log
and
in
the only thing
existing user.
The only thing I want to get here is I want to just grab the environment that he created. And the rest of the test, I remember most of the libraries for the most part. Yeah, he's already created his test.env. I just want to see how he connected to the database.
We'll also call after
so let me go a little
each,
bit earlier on
in
here and see where that's being done
runs at. Before each test case in this test suite. Now,
okay, so maybe I need to go back a little further. Actually, I need to go back about here, I believe, because this is where he started testing our routers.
Related to the Task Manager app. Yeah. Now, currently, that would be a for the test tap the database.
So jump through
again.
There.
So it'll
yeah, there
be
we go. So yeah, I was right. So we did create a MongoDB URL. So I'm just gonna slide over to the side and add that to my dev.env mongo underscore MongoDB underscore URL, and I'm gonna grab that URL that we currently have in our database, this Mongo's.js file that we have here. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out. And I believe these key value pairs are stored as strings, which is why I can just take this out and do process.env.mongodb underscore URL. And I'm not gonna save it just yet because it doesn't exist. So I'm gonna paste that value in there, And as you can see here, you don't have to have it with the string notation. And then the only thing I'm going to do the same thing over in our test.env. So I'm just going to paste this in. And the only thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a dash, and it's going to be test. And this will create another database for us, so that way we can access and manipulate that. And you see here, this is how we're going to link to it. Let's see. And then the other thing we're going to do, we're going to go into our package.json, and you see in here on scripts, we're actually going to write a script in here. It's going to be test, and this test script is going to, I forgot my comma. So in this test script, we now have to do the same thing that we had above, but with one slight difference. We're going to take, actually I'm just going to copy it. We're going to take this env, we're going to take all of this. We're not going to copy that notemon, notemon stuff, because we're not using notemon here. And instead of dev, this will be test. And there's actually going to be another thing we're going to run. It's called jest. And I'm going to do something called, I'm going to add something called watch. And what this will do is we're going to use another I'm going to call it a testing framework. And what it does is that's going to be what we actually use to run our tests. So it's going to mock a lot of different things. So it's going to help us with our tests. I'm going to just save this for now. I'm probably missing a thing or two, but I think we're good here. And to get the ball rolling, I actually have to have to install jest. So I'm going to do npm install jest. And just to show you guys where that is, let's go jest. And then if we go here, this is what jest is. A delightful JavaScript testing framework with a focus on simplicity. I like simplicity. This website is very simple, straightforward. I actually looked at the documentation. It's it's simple enough for me, because if I have a problem, I can actually read this, and that is important. If you want to experiment with other things, there's also something called I want to say what is it? Mocha. There we go. And I don't know why, but a lot of the testing frameworks, even for other languages, except for maybe Python, are coffee related. Or think about this programming languages. Java, you have Mocha is a testing framework. Another Java testing framework is called Mojito. So like a mojito or something. So they have, they kind of have names along those lines. And this is also, just another kind of framework that you can work with. And you can see who works with this. I think this is supposed to be Wix. I'm not sure. And you can see who uses them. The only symbol that sticks out here is Yahoo. But yeah, that's who uses them. Jest is older, so that's why I'm sticking with Jest. And these are their sponsors as well. Not really familiar with any of these. Not familiar with any of them. Nope. Nope. But that's all fine and dandy. These are their sponsors. Oh, never mind. Here we go. So, but look at this. Facebook uses them. Twitter uses them. New York Times, Spotify, Airbnb, Instagram. So these are big name companies that use them, and that's why I'm using. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me, right? So now let's just go ahead and get started. So I think they also have a config file where you can set some stuff up in here. So we're just gonna go ahead and grab this, and Yeah, it's dev dependency. So let's go ahead and get started. So Control Shift V if you're on Windows, and you can just put that in there. And then we're gonna let that take a second to run, and then we'll have Jest installed. And then while that's doing that, we're gonna manipulate a few things, and the reason being is gonna come later, but I just want to do it now while I'm thinking about it. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we can gut all of this here. I think we can keep Mongo's there. Well, actually, I think we wanted to cut this too. And I believe we're going to take all of this stuff out and just leave app.listen. The reason being is because when we start testing our routers, we don't want it to actually listen on our physical port. Actually, it's not Jest. It's going to be an Express has its own testing framework. SuperTest, there it is. So Express has something called SuperTest, which will work those routers for us, as you can see here. And when you see const app, it does. When you have all of this stuff in here, we can. This is how we'll test our routers. So we don't want to have that app.listen in the file. So the only thing we're going to do is we're just going to create a new file, and we're just going to call that app.js. And it seems like this is taking quite a bit. That's why some people prefer to use something called Yarn. It does the same thing as It does the same thing as npm. I think it's just a little bit more robust. So that's why some people prefer to use that instead of, I forgot what I was saying. That's why some people use it. It's just faster. I don't know I don't know what's happening under the hood to actually make it faster, but I do know that in my experience when I have used it, it has installed things faster.
There is one more thing we're going to configure, our Jest configuration.
So yeah, here it is. Here.
Right.
So this is actually the configuration for Jest.
It's gonna guide.
And I guess you got to set that test environment. So let's go ahead and do that while we're waiting. Let's go back into our package.json, and we're going to add a configuration for Jest. And this just tells Jest what kind of testing environment we're using. And I guess Jest is, there's different backend servers that you can use. We're using Node.js. There's other things. I believe I want to say Axios or something is a different kind of server. There's now something called Dino, which is a replacement. It's made from it's made by the creators of Node.js, but they have something called Dino, which is supposed to be superior to Node, but it's not going to take over just yet. But that's just to go to say, hey, there are other things, and this is why we have to set it so that it knows what we're using to write our code in. Seems like VS Studio Code is pretty tied up. Oh, it just crashed on me. So I'll have to relaunch that. So there's actually going to be a few things that I'm going to have to pretty much what I'm doing now is I'm going to restructure the code, and while VS Code is throwing its fit, let's just go ahead and see how we're going to do that. Where is it? I'm going to go back just to see the end of that configuration. Yeah, that's all we needed to do. Here, yeah, too soon.
To AP.
Yep, that's all we had to do. But there's also one more thing that we're going to do, and that's where I want to say that's too far. I believe this is it, because this is
something
where
along the lines of should log in.
no, here I just got app.js in there. So let's look over here, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna restructure that index.js so that way we have our we can access the we can do all the stuff we want to do to test our stuff without
actually calling listen.
And I'll let you guys hear this for a second.
Restructuring things across two files so we can get the Express application without necessarily actually calling listen. To do that, all we're going to do is create a separate file in the source directory, so a new file sitting right next to index.js, and I'm going to call this app.js. This is where the Express application will get set up and exported, then our test suite can load it in, and index.js will also be able to load it in just so it can call listen. Let's go ahead and see what this is going to look like, as it'll be easier to understand once it's done. To start, we're going to take everything in index.js and copy it over to app.js. Now, the only thing we don't want to do in app.js is call listen, so we'll remove it. From there, we'll go ahead and export the application. So module, right here, .exports.
So I'm just going to play catch up. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So I believe everything was cut.
In index.js and copy it over to app.js.
Right. So let me go and do that. We're going to copy everything. And I'm going to paste that in there. And I believe I'm removing listen. But before I do that, let me do module dot exports equals what are we exporting? I want to say express, but I think that's, what is it, app?
Now, the only thing we don't want to do in app.js is call listen, so we'll remove it. From there, we'll go ahead and export the application. So module, right here, .exports, and we're going to set that equal to app.
There we go.
Now, since we're no longer calling listen, we're no longer using the port, and we could go ahead and remove that as well.
So remove the port as well.
You could leave it in place, but it's a bit unnecessary. So this file sets up the Express application and exports the app. Now, we still want index.js to work as expected, but we don't want to have the same code in multiple places. These files are basically duplicates. So what are we going to do? All we're going to do is start this file off up top by loading in the Express application from app.js. So right here, const app equals, I'm going to require the file we just created, that is ./app.
There we go.
And now we can remove almost everything in this file. We can remove all of our require calls.
We're removing everything else in here. We just want the port, and we just want the...
All we're going to leave in place are these three things.
There we go.
We load in the Express app, we define our port,
we get our port,
and then
we listen.
Call listen.
So that's all I needed. So this, and you'll see why we did this in a second. Again, when you test the Express router, we're going to use something called SuperTest, and that is going to handle things for us. So I'm going to save this. So now everything is still actually going to work as before. We just did a little, we just pulled things out because we'll be using this app.js in our tests. And now I just want to look down here to see if, nope, it didn't install. So for some reason, just had some issues installing. So let me go ahead and just save this. I'm going to put in the test environment variable. Test environment, and I think I put node like this. That should be all that I have to do. Let me go up to the Jest documents and check that out. So where are we? I'm just looking for the configuration. I believe that was at the top when we were at the other page. Yep, config. So we just have to tell it what the test environment is, and if we scroll down, we should be able to find it here. So let's do test in. Oh, they don't make it easy, huh? Let me see if I do just like that. So yeah, we know we have a test environment. As you can see down here, we found it, and we put node in there. I don't see anything else that I can do. But the test environment that will be used for testing, the default environment in Jest is a browser-like environment, like through JS DOM. So it'll create like the JavaScript DOM, which is technically this. All of these elements that are done in HTML are DOM elements, and that's not what we want because we're using, we have other stuff running. If you're building a node service, you can use the node option. By adding a Jest environment doc block. Well, we don't have to do it this way. I put it over here in our JSON, so I'm just gonna trust myself and the course that I paid for. So let's try to get this thing running again. Believe. Oh shit! What did I do? Oh shit! I remember. I have since changed the what was in my forget what you call that, clipboard. There we go. So let me try this again. Try to save Jest again because we need to install it in order for it to work. And then what is this? I don't remember creating that. Let me delete that. Oh wait. Ah, crap. I deleted my get ignore, but it's not lost. I can just go to my trash can and restore it. So we go to the recycle bin, and my computer isn't charging. I thought I had this thing plugged up, but it's not. So what is this then? Oh, I see. This is, wait, I don't know what this is actually. Sorry, I got something charging. Oh, okay, this is my screen. This is my other laptop. So I can plug this up here. There we go. Right, so let's see if okay, cool. Just has installed, and this is fine. What happened was it wasn't tracking get ignore, so that's why we got that message. But it's fine because actually, let me refresh. Without having get ignore on here, your Git history is going to be pretty big. I thought I restored it from the trash can. I'm be pissed if I didn't. I think I just opened it and closed it. I don't think I actually no, I never. Oh, I opened it and then never used it. So we're gonna go in the trash can and we're gonna restore this. We're gonna restore that. But I'm not opening it. So there we go. So git ignore should be back to its former glory. Refresh now. What the heck? Okay. Talk about pissed off. Oh, come on. Alright, so for some reason it doesn't want to show me my git ignore, but I know I just restored it from my recycle bin. Oh, apparently not. There we go. I don't know what I did last time. So it's back, right? Deleted it. It's back. We're good. Now we shouldn't get our message from Git saying that we have too much stuff in there. So now we're gonna do the same thing, and I'm just gonna go a step ahead and install SuperTest because we will need that in a second. And as you can see, this save dev just separates the stuff that our code needs to run, once it goes into production, and then the stuff that we just need locally on our computer to test. So let me get that up in there, and there we go. So we can go ahead and clear the terminal up, and just to let you guys, and then what I did was in Jest, I put this watch thing on there because what that does, it's pretty much the same thing we do with NodeMon. It'll let Jest detect any file changes and rerun, so that way when I create a new test, I don't have to worry about redoing it. I don't have to worry about, oh, let me save it, and rerun it. It'll just pick it up and just re-execute the tests. So now if I do npm run test, our test environment will boot up. And this is the script, and there it is. Right now we don't have any tests in here, so that's why we're seeing this. I can't remember if I have to do a jest init, because I did see that in the documentation. So just to make things easier for myself, I'm just gonna go over here and see
which I want to take a quick
what's been done.
Clear the terminal, and npm test to rerun Jest one more time.
What's this here?
In here, we'll write our test cases, and this file will be
I want to
first
get back
thing we
to the
want
very beginning.
style
After he's
as dev dependencies. Right here from the
So this is what he's get. I'm actually going to take the closed captions off so I can read down here.
As a development dependency.
So once it's got it,
that means that by default, it has arguments we can use to customize it later. But for now, just this key value pair. Other ones, additional what we get. It's telling me we just output. Then I'll go ahead and run npm test. On terminal, I'll be using clear to actually run the test command just to see what we get.
Okay, cool. So I don't have to do a just init. There we go. So now I'm going to go over to this test directory, and I'm going to write our first series of tests. In the previous course, in this course, what I was learned was all this stuff is, we can jump right down into Express. And this is directly testing our routers. So just to give you an idea of what I mean, we jump through here.
We don't want the test environment.
Nope. Too far.
CM.
We
script,
jump. Where's it?
At the creating separate files, which
start
to load in all of our app and connect to it, making queries to the.
So any second now.
Leave them in place.
There we go. So this is what we're going to be doing. I forgot what I was trying to do here. But now we're going to start. Oh, I know. I was trying to show you guys how we would get this set up, which is why we did what we were doing there with our tests. So this is all we have to do. We pull on our app, and we're going to use SuperTest, and let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to call this the I don't know what you called it. User test. Okay, yeah, so you have to use that dot test. That is actually important. So we're going to have a new file, and this is going to be user.test.js. And as you can see, that dot test makes it turn a certain color. As opposed to yellow, it's now orange. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that actually tells Jest. See, you see here we have a fail now because we have a test suite with no tests, and that's what it's complaining about. So we're gonna do const request, and we're gonna say that equals, we're gonna require our SuperTest that we installed. We did install that. Yep, there we go. So now we're done with the package.json, and then we also need to pull in our app. So now we can just say app equals const equals require, and this is where we're going to pull in our app. So we can do dot slash, I believe, and there we go, app. So now we have our testing library, and we have our app. And the first test that we want to run is to create a user. But since we're going to be using this over and over, well, we're going to use it over and over again. So we're going to do some things to set things up. But I'll just start writing things out, and then I'll clean it up as we go because it'll make more sense that way. So the way we get started is we're gonna. I thought it was test how you set these things up. Yeah, okay. So you just write test, right? And then in here you say what the test should do. So we should say should create a new user, right? And then from there, this is where you actually put your callback function, as you can see. I'm just going to make everything async because we're dealing with requests. So you can actually use async await in your test as before. And there we go. So now we're actually in the test. And what we'll do is we're going to do const. I want to say request, but you know, that's so I'll say response because we'll send a request and we get a response. So I'm going to say const response equals, and this is where we'll use the request here. So you'll do request, and I believe you do dot, and you can do dot get or dot post, right? I'm missing something here. So I'm not even going to use this. I'm going to go to the SuperTest so we can see. We already have this, so I don't have to worry about that. Oh, is that what I forgot? I think it might be something like this. You put we want this to await because now we want you know when you make your request, it's asynchronous. Request dot, there we go. Yeah. So I just want to see how to set this up because I forget how to run it. Yeah, you put your app there. So request app, and then we're gonna say dot post because to create a user is a post. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna go over to our user router, and we can actually split our screen. I don't know a more convenient way to do this without doubling. So if you do know, let me know. And we're gonna do the dot posts, and this is what we're gonna do. So you do in almost every programming language, when people have these kind of, once you start chaining these things together, they tend to put them on a new line. So as you see here, so for instance, it might be like the first one might stay on, and for the post we're gonna use our admin route. So we'll just copy. So we'll just use same syntax as admin, and then we now have our callback because now we have to send in our body and all that other stuff. I believe, oh wait a second, oh that's Mocha. So Mocha, well, I like the way Mocha is because you can define one big test like this. You can describe it, and you can have little bitty tests all in between. Um, that's cool, but I'll stick with what we have right now. I really do like that though. If depending on how things work with Jest, I may change to Mocha later. But it's not really that big of a deal because everything has their own test suite. So you already know what you're testing anyway. Um, and there's other ways that you can get the same functionality as that without using Mocha. So what else are we looking for here? We need to create our user. So let's go ahead and do that. And you'll see in a second while I'm creating our user outside of this. User equals, I believe you're supposed to do it like this. We're going to define all of the stuff. We can define it outside of this, but I believe the best way to do this would be to create your user object, have it at the top, and then do other things with it. So for instance, you can hold up, wait a second. I'm gonna go to the setup and tear down because this is what's
Something
actually
along the lines
we're
of
gonna
should
need.
log in.
So you see here up top,
So right here.
they have things going on, and I'll explain that in a second too. There we go. Before each, we actually want to. Let me just browse this, and then I'll explain in a second. So we're gonna pull in our user model. And then we're going to create our user. So we define our user one here. There we go. That's what I was looking for. I thought I had to use my model directly for that. So I'm going to go ahead and create my user. And I actually want to open this over here. So let's hope that works. Let's see. Click here. Click user. Yes, it did work. Cool. So the only thing, so what we're doing here is I'm going to call this user one. Reason being, I might want to test another, do something with another user. So I might have user one that's at admin and have a user two that's not admin, just to make sure that the authorization privileges and stuff like that still work. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start creating this user one object, and say Tom, Jon Snow. Yes, I watch Game of Thrones because I'm lit. If you haven't seen Game of Thrones, I highly recommend. Let's see, jsnow@gmail.com, right? And then I'm actually going to leave some white space just to test it's able to trim as I specified. And for Jon Snow, I'll put space before and after, so that it trims the white space all around the text. That's what it's supposed to do. Next, oh, I know what I forgot. Email. Actually, I don't think these were supposed to be surrounded in quotes, because these are the field names. So then password has to have something. So let's go ahead and get a password, and we'll just put J Snow Love 2020 whatever, right? And then we'll put a @ symbol on that thing, and we'll say is admin true, and I don't think we need to do anything with the tokens, at least not yet. I don't want to give him any tokens. We're gonna create our own tokens. All right. There we go. And then the other thing we need to do is just to do before each. feel like I'm missing something there as well, but the library should have been pulled in here to have all the stuff, so the functions should be known, but they don't even seem to be recognized. But we'll see in a second. Actually, I'm just gonna put a console log in here just to make sure the suite is up and running. So let's just go and say here, comment that out, and then I'll do console.log working. And when we save, it's going to run our test, and it should pass. Oh, what do we got going on here? Yeah, so our test passed, but there's more. Oh, okay, yeah. Our test right now doesn't know that it's going to have to mock this. So that's wonder why he didn't get that problem. I mean, the way I'll fix it, there's a way you can fix this is you'll have to create a mock. So I'll just go ahead and do that now, just because I don't know, that's why I'm getting the error.
Something like JSON Web Token, I would create JSON Web Token.js.
So you see here, right? I would have to go in this test deck directory. I'm going to create another folder, and it's going to be __ mock __. And that's how it looks stuff up. And it has to have the same name as this. I believe it just has to be mail.js. I believe that's how it works. And I don't think, oh yeah, so let's go to the emails, subscriber, so this mail.js, because it has, so yeah, we got to do one more thing. We got to do another folder, and this one is going to be SendGrid, I believe. And then we put mail.js in there. And the reason, oh shit, I put it in the wrong place. Oh yeah, so it's the only mock that we have. For some reason it likes to do this. So when we click on our mail.js file, it's actually in the right directory, but it just showcases it this way because it's the only one in there. So when you look at the mocks, same thing. Oh, I have to do @SendGrid. Okay. So it has to be almost exactly that. Rename @SendGrid, and should be off the hook now.
Mail. So the code at least doesn't fail.
And then what I'll have to do now is I'll have to grab these the method that I said I'm gonna mock. I have to just put something. I just have to call it. I don't even think I have to put in there.
Sitting module.x. And down below, you'll actually notice that our test suite is failing. And if we scroll up, we can see why. Right here, test suite failed to run, and that's referring to our user test suite. And the reason is that sgmail.setAPI key is not a function. And they're right. Yeah. Now, the reason this is happening is because we've provided a mock for that module, but we're not exporting an object with that function defined, so let's fix it.
So now I just have to here. So if I leave this with the way it is and then save it, we might still get the error because I don't think this is reading as a function. Yeah, it just crashed actually. So let me finish
on this object. I'm going to set a. I'll do the same thing down below for the.
Okay. So everything that gets called in there has to be defined the same way. So I'm going to do set API key just as we did before, like here. Set API key, and we don't even have to put anything in there. We just have to make sure that it has stuff. And I think I do comma, and then I do confirmation email, and I think I have it taking parameters.
The other method we're using for accept arguments and key to be set, but we don't do API. In this case,
And okay, so send is the only thing in there because I guess this confirmation email is going to get called and we just make send it just be nothing, because that's the actual method function. Okay, I say method because I learned how to code in Java, but in JavaScript everything is called a function. So you'll see me doing this a lot. So I just need to mock send here and then save this, and then I should be good to go. Boom, there we go. So now everything's good to go. Um, the reason why I was failing is because it was looking at our in the, well, one, in our test environment we don't have our we don't have our token defined for our like when you look at this test DMV, we don't have a token defined for the SendGrid API key. So that was the first failure. And again, we don't want this to actually run. So we just mock the way we mock that out is to, you know, literally do this. Um so that's that. I guess, I mean, if I wanted to be um I mean, I can't think of a way to actually send an email and then check it without, you know, without actually sending it. But then it's like, okay, how is it going to check your email? You know, then you have to write a test script to be able to check your email and see that it got it. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I just don't need to go that far because if it fails, SendGrid will actually let me know. Um, you know, in terms of product when I have my production code, if if my emails aren't sending or things like that, SendGrid actually tracks that. So now that I know these tests are passing, let's get back to what we were trying to do. Um, there's a before each thing that we're gonna run, and I'm not gonna write it just yet, just so you guys can see why we're gonna run that before each and what it does. So we're here at the post admin, and so far so good, right? So let's go back to the SuperTest data and figure out what else we can find. And I want to find that send thing here. So if you are using the dot end, I don't even know what that means, but method dot expect, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this dot send because on our post, this is how we send our data. Um, so we can send the object here, which is pretty cool. And we can set some things on the HTTP header, and we can make some expectations. I don't think we need to go that deep, but hey, let's check and see what's done here. So I'm gonna go back over here just because I want to get an example, and then based on that example, I'll be running all my codes. I did look over this before, so that's why I'm familiar. But I just wanted to be sure. Okay, cool. So dot post, and then we don't need to set anything until we get into our token stuff. So we have dot post, and then I want to chain this now. I want to get a pretty syntax for chaining because this stuff looks nice. Why does my stuff not look nice? I want to have nice things too. Oh well. So yeah, it's taking me back here. I'm just tab it like that. Hopefully when I do this again, yep, there we go. And then we'll do dot send, and then we're sending the data that would usually go with our request. So think about the request dot body. That's what this send is doing. And what you see here, yep, request dot send. Doesn't tell you that, but that's what's happening. And then we're gonna send user 1. And we have that. So now we want to do dot expect, and what we want to expect is the response, I believe. No, we want to expect our 201. We want to make sure that this is successful. And that is even shown here in the documents. And we don't have to worry about this stuff. So what's going to happen is with Jest, if I see. So with Jest, if we get this 201 response, then the test is going to pass. So let's just go ahead and save that and see if it runs. And look at that, it runs. I wonder what's going on here. I changed the environment variable, so I wonder if that is a problem here. So sorry about this. I just want to go back to see
our user test suite, and that
environment
when we're running,
because that's pretty annoying.
Something along the.
So let me see if I can find the environment variable that this guy created, and we can be back to where we were. I believe it's happened here. It's either here or the other one.
Can use to do things like test login and for our outs. Test. So now our test environment is using one database on our local.
So that's it. On my test environment, I do actually have to pass over that. Well, I have to pass over the SendGrid API key as well. So even though I don't use it directly, I guess it still has some kind of verification in there. So that's actually kind of cool. So now let me go back over here. So and this is actually this is some of the stuff that Postman's doing for us. So now I don't get that error anymore either. So that's seems like I'm getting something. So let me stop this actually. A worker process failed to exit. So okay, so this is actually expected. That error is because that actually brings me to the next issue. When you try to run this test twice, we're getting a problem because the database is how do you say? So look at that. We got another database here. The problem is that the user exists now. So because that user already exists, we can't just go ahead and do it again. So that's why we have to do this before each. And what this translates to literally is it says, okay, before each test, I want you to do something. And I believe we do something like this. So now we have a function.
In this case, the second is the path to the file.
I'm just
and this starts from
pull my heating pad down because my
something along the lines of should
burn.
log in existing user.
So let me go all the way back
we'll go
here.
ahead and remove that from the moment.
So
by .o with our considers this.
We want to make sure we delete everything. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And then another thing I'm gonna need to do is I'm gonna have to pull in our user. So we have to const user equals require, and then let's go ahead and grab that user model. Models / user. So we grab our user model. So now that we can do some database operations, and the only thing we're gonna do is gonna do await, because we want to clear the database first. So we're gonna say await user dot delete many, and this delete many, if we leave it like this, will delete everything in the database, and that's what we want for that specific for our test database anyway.
Done. It'll move on to the test cases. So we
I forgot to excuse me, async on that. So async, can't wait without async. And then I think there's one more
Finally, want to make
setup we
sure
want to
that
do.
users are gone before data for our tests to work with.
And then what he went ahead
Start
and
by
did
and call
was
delete. I
created
will
another
specify
user.
the name to the data.
And the reason being there was because in this specific case we're using this user here, but we want to have another user in place for our authorization stuff, because once this is done, that's it. We can't use that user anymore. We don't have access to the test outside of this, so we don't have access to the results. So I'm just gonna go in here and just change this up a bit, and say Sansa Snow leave, and then J Snow from S Snow. S Snow love. There we go. And then that should fix the test. And then what'll happen is and then we'll say await user one dot save. So now we have our user one in here, so we can do the authorization stuff that we want it to do. Another thing that we're going to have to do is add a token onto our user, because this user is going to be an admin. So in order to access some of the other routes that we're going to use later, we're going to have to put a token on this user. So we're just going to get that in now while I'm thinking about it, and you'll see how all this comes together. So we're going to require JSON web token, and we're good there. So what we'll do is we'll say tokens. I might be able to do it outside of this, but let's see if I can do it here. Do tokens. Yeah, I'll do tokens user one dot tokens dot token. I think I do it here. User one dot tokens dot token tokens equals I can do something like that. It's an empty array.
Database, and we'll do that.
And then
then right there, this out. I could have a run everything. Now don't worry, we ability, and we can see we have a pass.
Yeah, there we go. So that's all I really need at this very second anyway. And then if I save this, we should be good. Oh, forgot the CLS. So save that and then get our test going, so I can just clean up some of the stuff that we're getting. If I still get that error with my jeez. Oh, okay. Different kind of problem. This is a problem. Like, I hate when this happens. So I'm still getting some old errors in here, so I don't know which ones are old recurring errors and which ones are new. So I believe this ran again because I didn't change my process, that I didn't rerun my CMD env-cmd script, because even though if I go into my test variables and change it while this is still running, if I don't stop it, it doesn't reset the env variables, and that's just because at the file at the time when it executed all of that and set the environment, it didn't have those changes. So even when you refresh, it still only has the changes that were set at the save right before it ran. So if you change your environment variables, you will have to go back and stop your server, for lack of better words, your test server, and rerun it. Here we're having a problem because of the way that I'm doing things here. What's happening here is that it did not like something in here, and I'm thinking it's this save. Why didn't it like that? Oh, I see. We never defined it as a user. We're just trying to save this object, and it didn't know where to save it. So we have to do new user, and then we do user one dot save. So that way it knows that it's a user object. And just to explain some of the other points here, I'm gonna just go ahead and CLS that, and then I'll go to npm run test. So we have a clean environment. And here it takes quite some time. Test is still failing. It didn't pick up on the changes I made actually. That's interesting. I didn't save it somehow. So it took 3 seconds to run the test, and you see everything works. So that's perfect, and we're not getting any of the error messages we were getting before. And I'll just prove that by first quitting, and then we're going to clear this, and then I'm actually just going to create a new test environment, because I'm not liking the way that was looking. I told you guys I'm a real stickler about having a clean terminal, because when you start to have a lot of stuff in here, once you start running a few tests, you're like, and you scroll up too far, you're like, huh, did I fix that? Did I not? You have no idea. So look at that. Our first test passed, and we have our user in here. We can actually do some more assertions in here, which is why I saved this like this, and I don't like the way this looks now. So I'm actually just gonna let everything go back to be at the front where it's supposed to be. It doesn't look as neat, but I just like the way that looks. So another thing I want to do is I want to expect, I think I can do it this way, because I want to start doing some more advanced assertions. I want to look at the response object as well and do some things.
What you works.
This is what I mean here. Once you create our user, we want to do some more things, right? We want to make sure that user is actually in the database, and I actually want to expect. I want to see the response object. So I'm going to try this out. So expect response dot to equal, and then I'm just going to say I want to give it the object that I want it to be equal to. And the reason being is because we removed some things from our user. We removed the where is it? In our user model, when we save our user and we send that stuff back, we strip off our user stuff. Here we go here. So when we look at that JSON response, we remove the password and remove the tokens. So I want to make sure that when I send this password back, I get to see the same data. And I actually think that there should be some more stuff in here, and you'll see in a second. This is actually going to fail because I don't have the created at stuff and all of that. So should create new user. Expected 0. Okay. So I should have did this data here. So this is the request here. So expect, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to do response dot re request. I believe that's how it's written here, because we have our object, and it's the header, then it's the request, and then after the request, and I think I have to go one step deeper and do dot data. So let me try this. Dot data. And then let's see if that works. Expect 201. I really don't like the way this output is, because usually when you're chaining, you put them like this, but sometimes it can look a little, off. but it doesn't seem like I can do any better right now in terms of looks, because I don't want them to think that this stuff is the same. Received undefined here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna console log this thing here. So let's do console.log response, so we can see exactly what our response is gonna look like. And it takes a few seconds to run the test. And look at this object here. Huge, actually. Really huge. Alright, I didn't expect it to be that big. Phrasing. Let's see. So this is, all the stuff that it's doing behind the scenes. It's setting all of these things. And it also gives us a lot of access to this. So that's also cool, because you can do a lot of things to manipulate your request or your response to have some things. And I think this is actually what we want here. So we're getting all of this stuff for free, right? When we look at our user, look at the stuff we have on here. We whack when we sent that out, we whacked quite a few things. So now I'm trying to actually see how I can get access to this thing. Protocol. I do response. Is it response dot text? So let me try that. So I'm just gonna do dot response and then just try to do this piece by piece. And the only reason why I'm doing this is because we do you want to make sure that when you make your changes, maybe somebody deletes something, or just for kind of sanity's sake, I like to do stuff like this just to make sure that I say, hey, okay, if I say I want to verify that the data that I sent is what I said, then that's why. And I think this is it. So if I just do response.text, I think that should do it, but I want to quit first and clear up my terminal so that way I can distinguish between the two, between different tests. And what'll happen here is, yes, cool. So it ran the test again, I think. So I'm still getting all of this extra data. I don't want that. And you see this test only took 167 milliseconds to run. So let's see how I can get access to this object, because this object is really, really big. And the only thing I want to do is go up here, right? And I want to put the object in something that makes it a little bit more neater. So let me see if I do console.response. Incoming message, maybe message dot now I'm gonna do .req and just see if that changes anything. If we can undefined, cool, okay. I never finished typing. Cool, okay, so don't have to worry about that. But for some reason when I look at this response object, I just want to get the data from here. So how can I verify what this object looks like? Well, once you know what this object looks like, then we can pull data off and make our comparison. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna go into GitHub, and I just want to see what this request object is gonna look like. Let me do this. I never talked about this thing, the create indexes. But yeah, it's sorry about that. Let me go back to the subscriber.js model. This is not the one. This is the one. So again, this is the create index that I use, and again, this is what I use to delete users that don't confirm, and that just comes from here. So you give it the indexes that we want, and these are the options, and the options were to expire and this thing here. So when you go and look at it, expire after seconds, see this allows you to expire data on indexes applied to a data. So that's what that was doing. And then the partial filter expression creates a partial index based on the given filter object, and the object was created at, well, is confirmed. That's how we filtered our data. And I mean, that's really it. And we had to put an index on something, an array of index specifications to be created. That's interesting. I might learn a little bit, dig a little bit more into this, because it seems like I don't have to actually use this date. Actually, I think I do, because I need a reference for a date when I want it to expire something. So never mind that. Could be wrong, but I don't know. I'll do more research on it on my own, and then I'll give you guys a follow up. But back to what we were doing with our tests. So we have our response that's incredibly huge and difficult to filter. So this underscore readable state is the object that holds a lot of this data here. So let's see if we can track this. So this close here. So then there's another one, readable, and oh wait, lost it already. Incoming message is the biggest. I think that's all of the stuff here, so I don't think we have to worry about that. Then we look at the readable state. This is the object. This is the one that we need to look for the ending point for this. So we look at this parentheses here, and then we just follow it down. So far the decoder is the only thing that has closed, and then it should stop here. So this, yeah, so that's where the readable state stops. Then you have another one called readable, and that has some events, and that's where your events close. And then you have event count, max listeners, socket, and this socket runs pretty deep as well. The socket has a readable state, so we now need to look for two closing squiggly braces outside of this one, and that's one. And we need a few more now. So it's easy to get lost here. Alright, I'm already lost. So what I want to do is I want to take all this JSON, and there's actually a online tool that we can use to clean this up, so that way we can actually read it and make sense from it. So I'm going to do Control-Shift-C to copy from the terminal, and then I'm just going to do prettier JSON. Clean up raw JSON online. There we go. JSON formatter. I'm just gonna drop this in here. And I want to see I didn't want to do that. So let's go back. Not that far. So instead of compact, let's stick with that 3-page tab and try that. Important thing is we can actually see the endings, and I want to go down to that text. So I think the text might just be by itself. So let me see what happens if I just do response dot text. Oh, look at that. We got it. And then now we can do our expect on this. And the only thing we want to do, we just want to say we want to expect that the response dot text dot not dot to dot to be, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the ID on this object. Otherwise I can't verify the ID on this thing. And I'm not going to worry about this v0. And I think the way that this ID works is I create another constant here. Constant be the user one ID, and that's going to be equal to new. I think it's mongoose. So let me const mongoose equals require mongoose, and you can actually access some of the stuff that mongoose uses to create these objects, because we know that mongoose is who mongoose creates the object, not creates this mongoose creates the user ID, not us. So if we use that to our advantage, and let's see if I can just access mongoose directly. Mongoose dot type, I believe, types dot ID, object ID. There we go. New mongoose object ID. I just wanted to create one. I don't want to. There we go. I can just do that. I don't have. Oh, I think it said it was optional. Yeah, it is optional. So then, the only thing we'll do here is say the ID is going to be user one ID, and put our comma there, and we're good to go. So now we can just say, still not good enough. And the reason why is because when I do this, I have to remove the so I can do this. I can do user one object, right, equals the user one dot two object. I believe that's how we're supposed to do this. Yep. And then after that, we want to delete stuff from it. So we want to delete user one object dot password and tokens. Delete user one object dot tokens. In some cases, I'm not saying some cases, for some people, when they create a user, they want them to be signed in automatically. Since I'm not actually supporting that, I didn't want to waste time setting that up on my user model. So now you see that when we rerun this test, oh, I forgot to set this to be something. Oh, user one already is an object. So I should be able to just do this then. User one. I should be able to just do that. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, I see, I see, I see, I see. So I need to be able to find this user, but I can't use the ID because I don't have the ID for this user. So that's interesting. So here we go. Let's try that. I'm going to do expect user, actually response here, dot body dot, I think they said ID, underscore ID. No, I'm all the way off. Cons user equals await user dot find by ID, and we're going to use the response dot body to get that, right? That body dot user dot underscore ID. And let me just make sure this works. Dot underscore ID, and now we have our user ID. So now we want to expect that our user is not null, right? Dot not dot to be null, and that's how you'll write it. And then if I save that, it should not be null. The user that we create should not be null. In this case, it seems like it is, and it's saying that our stuff is undefined. So now let me go back and see what happened here. So we created our user, we expected our 201. So now I'm going to back this up and have it there. So I mean, this is back to kind of where we were, but in this case we don't have to use Postman to check that our stuff is working. We can just run these tests. Await user dot find by ID. We did response dot body dot user dot underscore ID.
Expecting. Right here, assertions, Andrew. Have user require us to move the current expect call and replace it with a new one. It's okay. This solution profile.
So I'm trying to figure out why this didn't work though, because it should be able to pull
is to just
off
give
of this
you
thing.
some tools that are going to make it possible to test in the future. So here's a few ideas for things you could test.
I want to verify.
You could go ahead and try to fetch the user from the database.
Await
So right here, assert that the database was changed correctly. Now in this case, that would mean that there is a new user with the same ID as the ID. I can assert that I actually do get that the user.
So and the funny thing is here we're actually not, well, we're not getting the information that we said we wanted to get. I wonder if this has a part to play. I don't think so. Nope. And I'm actually going to delete this for a second because I don't need it just yet. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this as well. So now it's still going to fail. I didn't change anything. But I want to dig in a little deeper on what's going on with this response, because it's saying right now that this stuff is undefined. In here I don't actually see how they're getting this information for the user. So the only thing I can do is just do how I was doing before with the consoles.log. So I can just do console.log and try to look at the response.body and see what's on there. And since the name of this thing is admin, it might be admin instead of user, but I don't know. And yeah, so we're looking for all of this, but the console log is just showing this, which is interesting. The response body is only containing the information that we put in here when we created our user. So let me just go back a little bit, and when you look at the top, I don't see any user ID being created.
Sweet. Now the whole
up here, you know, I don't see a user ID on this stuff.
Off the request.
It could have been done later.
Non-exact.
So that's what I'm checking
status
here.
code in the response. bad credential request. So I'll
So let's just keep checking this thing.
some cases data, write a whole bunch of code ourselves. We're able to get up and running
See, look
really
at that.
quickly, even with more advanced testing things like
So then when you go down to authentication, that's when
to
I
create a
believe
new
he
test
started
case
to add
that
new stuff onto
interacts
the user. So that's where I got this stuff from. And then on the user one, that's where they added more information. But I don't need that for what I'm trying to test. So I need to figure out what happened there. And just give me a little
you'll create
quick
the
second.
second
So
tab.
when we go back into the advanced assertions, I want to see what I missed because I don't know if I missed something in the
Things
setup.
we can assert after the right here. So this is and just give you the ID. So here we're trying to extract that user from the database, and then we can go ahead and assert all sorts of things. For example,
So yeah, I think it's just a mismatch. Maybe this since this thing has been updated, you know, there's just so much more stuff on here now. So instead of trying to do that, I believe I can just do request dot body dot underscore ID. And this would be now we're passing, so that's how we're gonna get access to it. So you know, this is pretty much the learning process. You look at it. If it fails, you have to look at what you're dealing with and see how to manipulate it. So we just grab that body and grab that ID, and now we know that the user that we created isn't null. I wanted to make sure that what I really wanted to do is make sure that the we didn't pass in the password or the email as well. And we can also do that. Then we can assert that, for instance, we can go expect, right? We can say user dot password, right? And we can say, oh no, that's not what we want, because we want to say we want to expect response. So before we even start to look our user up, right, we want to make sure that that password is null. So we can say expect response dot password dot to be null. And same thing with the tokens. Here we don't create any tokens, so that's why we don't see tokens. Even if we go to JSON and we create a user, hopefully the one we have in here doesn't already exist. Oh, I'm not running the server. Let me try that real quick. Let's stop this. Let me do npm run dev, and you'll see here this is actually a good way to test to say our development server is still going to work. And there we go. And if I fire that off, I think our user already exists, or did I put something here that I shouldn't? Let me check the database, make sure there's no duplicates. That's more than likely what the problem is. Yep. Delete you, and then if I send this off again, that should be fine. There we go. And you see here, this is all we get. We don't get a password. We don't get the tokens. So that's the same thing we want to do over in our test. We just want to make sure that that's what's happening, because that's actually what we test. And expect response. Yep. And then we want to expect that the tokens are null. Actually, technically, it doesn't create tokens, but I'm just going to do it just for the heck of it. Expect response dot tokens dot to be null. And if I save this, we'll see all of this stuff going on. And the reason why I liked the way that no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this again. The reason why I like the way that Makito was written was because you had that describe syntax, and the reason being is you can isolate each individual. You can isolate all of your tests, and even if you're doing multiple tests within the same test, Because for instance, right, let's go look at our code. So right here, we're just testing creating a new user, right? That's the overall most important test. But then we have to make all these extra checks. What I liked about other frameworks, like for instance, I don't know what library. I think Karma for Angular. You have this describe thing, and in the describe, you can explain a little bit more about what's going on with your test. And that's really nice because your test is now readable. And the only thing I want to do is just look here at our test and see how we can make this look. Actually, I want to see if they have a describe. Let's go to docs. I think we're already here, but I wonder if they have a describe annotation in here. It's pretty standard amongst most. Oh, look at that. So here we go. This is what I like here. So now we can describe this, and then for each individual test that we do, we can do some things. And if I'm not mistaken, when you have this describe, you can actually create your stuff up top, and then you'll still have access it in the subsequent tests, if I'm not mistaken. So just executes all describe handlers in a test file before it executes any of the actual tests. This is another reason to do setup and tear down inside before and after handlers, rather than inside the describe blocks. One of the describe blocks are complete by default, just runs all tests serially in the order they were encountered. So if a test is failing, blah blah blah. So I don't think these tests give you access to other ones, but in here, I'm gonna say are just are constants in describe available in tests just, and globals, that's what we're looking for. Describe dot each, let's see what this does. Describe dot each, if you keep duplicating the same test suites in different data, describe dot each. So let's look here. So this array is so they created a describe, they have a callback, it seems like. So this is the syntax, and then this is the actual functions and the timeout. Test returns. Ooh, I can't read that. No, I definitely can't read that. So this runs only on one single block, but I like this because there we go. This is what I'm looking for. But I don't want to do dot only. So I don't want to do this because it'll only run that test. But if you do dot each, we should be able to do what I was thinking. And you know, reading those documentation is a little so I'll just do describe, and you'll see in a second what I mean. Describe dot each, and then how did this work? Describe dot each, and then there's some kind of table, it seems like. I don't want to create a table though. Oh, there we go. I can just do this. Creates a block that groups together several layers. Oh, there we go, right here. This is what I'm looking for. So the reason why I'm using describe is because I want to do some other things. And so we'll say should create a new user, right? So now what we'll do is we'll create we'll do just that. So what I'm going to do is, I think I did this wrong, comma, and then you do a callback. And then down here, so now we have this nice suite that'll do some things for us automatically. Not automatically, but it cleans our code up. So grab this, and we're going to tab it so that way it's readable. And now in here, we I have to do, I think I have to make this global. So I'm going to grab this, right, and we're going to move the response up to here. And by doing that, I believe I should still have access to response. So now look at that. Should and then you look at the way they describe this thing. Creating, and then so we're creating new user should return a 201 HTTP code, right? And then we test that. So I would say one of the big things with testing is that you want to make sure that your tests, and I mean we can have very simple tests like this, right? And then now you're explaining it, and each individual one, so maybe the code's different, you know, things change, and then we can say should strip away, creating a new user should strip away the password and tokens from the response. And then we have to open this test up. And I don't even think this needs to be async anymore. I think this needs to be async now. And then these are no longer in sync because the asynchronous process is up top. So that's how we're gonna continue with this for a second. And then I just need to check on something. So I think I'm just missing a oh, I don't know what I did there. I believe here. No, I keep doing that. I'm missing. There we go. So and this is it. I mean, you can break it up and you can write it out however you want. I just like it like this because look how easy it is to read this. Describe, we create a new user, we create the user here, and then now in each test we're just testing each individual piece. So now we're not testing everything as one whole, and then you're looking at it and you're just like, oh, okay, you have a bunch of stuff to look through. And then we should say 1 second. All right, you gotta love your grandparents. She called me right in the middle of a stream, but back to what I was doing, and I actually want some music to play. So I hope you guys don't hear it, because if you hear it, then YouTube is gonna mute my audio. So just give me 1 second. To pick a song. Oh, come on. There we go. Now I'm gonna get in my like songs. I don't know what it is that the Spotify desktop app always gives me problems. So let me try this again. Sorry for the sidebar, but I feel like I'm kind of focused right now. So when I get focused, I like to play music to kind of keep me in the same headspace. Big songs that match my frequency. And yeah. Alright, so I'm just going to have to pick one song and just play that, because for some reason it doesn't want to give me my playlist. You like song? It's almost like it cleared it out for me. So I just go to recently played, and let me pick something. This is my favorite song. Alright, so now let me make sure you guys can hear that.
Bring them out for that money on a race all day. Ain't no tripping, they bring it, I count it up now. I ain't nothing, y'all say. They don't know I came up from the bottom, but they know that these niggas be flashing. She don't fuck with me cause of $1. From the hood, but short of a mile. If I see the little bitch, I run down on the bitch, I don't bust it from out of the car. I got bitches roll 60s on guard, locking in like shit,
You can actually hear it.
Ain't no holding nothing back, I go hard. How I live, I be...
I don't even know how to restrict the audio from this thing. So, because I'm not sharing that in any way. So I'm actually intrigued here. What if I just turn the desktop audio down and then try it again? Now, let me make sure you guys can hear that. So I'm gonna pause for a second and see what happens. I'm pretty curious. Today's not my lucky day. So I guess I'll have to continue with the way things are going now. I don't even know how I'm sharing the audio. I think it's from one of my other screens. It's grabbing the audio and pulling that in. What if I remove this from the stream, if that'll do anything? And I'll try one last time. Sorry for the hold up. It's just I've never tried this before, so I don't really have another way to test it.
Checking, I'm getting it back. Real got to ride around in the leg. Hand out money so bro get a pack. Every come in, I give her a bag. Every 2 weeks, she go get her a whack. Let him keep talking, I been on his ass. Let him keep talking, I been on his ass. I'ma spin on his ass, I'ma blow this line. Let off a shot, you won't walk with the slime. Right in the front, do the dance, I'm slide. Pulling straight up with your bitch on the side. Pull up, start up and then send on the side. Real gangsters, they know he a hoe, he be high. Make it soul, a show, we gon' send him the patch.
So I'm just gonna pause it so I don't lose too much audio. Yep, so I am going to be stuck without music. So that's that. Let me switch my screen back to you guys. And yeah, okay. So back to the test suites. So in here, you see in your test suites, you can actually do further manipulation before you actually do something. So this functionality is also pretty nice, because you can isolate your tests. You can break them down to very modular pieces, and even though I'm not actually doing much in between this, it just makes the test so much easier, so that when something breaks, you know exactly which part of your test broke. Um, and this is actually how I see it. When I code, well, this is how I prefer to read code, and writing tests like this makes it so much easier. And and if all this breaks, then we know it's something going up here. And let me just go ahead and save that, and then let me go ahead and run our tests. And yeah, this is, I mean, look at this. This is pretty nice. So now we have the test failing, and we can now see that. Um, and I think it's because it's not asynchronous. So you can't async without having that await annotation in there. Um, it did fail again. And what is this? I don't even know what I'm doing with that one. So I'm actually just gonna clear this terminal and just run it again to see what happens. Could just fail again. I just wanted to clear it up so I can see old stuff from new stuff. Seems like this describe is actually the problem here. Um, Returning a promise from describe is not supported. Tests must be defined synchronously. Returning a value from describe will fail the test in the future versions of the test. Okay, so we will. So actually, I can do this here. I can const. I can say request response, and just actually I'll have to say let, because I'm going to redefine it somewhere else. And I'm not going to set it equal to anything. And then what I'll do here is I'll drop in the response, and this should allow this to be available globally. Um, should it gets a little different when you get into these test frameworks, but yeah, seems to be the case here. Another thing I have to do after clearing the terminal, I have to pull out this asynchronous thing here, leave my variable there, and SuperTest. So I think I might be able to save this as a response object, like that. If I did response, that response. Oh yeah, I'm not using TypeScript. Forgot for a second. So if I do this, probably more of the same, really. But only one way to find out. So we go down and we run this, and now we have something else. So we put await on this, but we don't have our async. So we go here. Let's just strip away response.expect. Oh, expect. But other tests have failed, I believe, as well. Received undefined. So what I was trying to do didn't actually work. So that is perfectly fine. I mean, we already have our test suite. I just wanted to see if I could make it a little bit more readable. But I believe this is fine. Somehow they were at least in the course, they were able to go deeper and turn this into a user to get this some kind of object off of this thing. And I didn't really get that. just wanted to check the object. Let me see if I do response dot body dot user, and I want to see what happens here. And I want to search this current lecture. I'm interested that nobody else got an undefined error here, because if you do response dot body, there is no dot user, and we see that right here. Like when we run this, and this time only one test failed. I don't know why that failed. So now we have another. I'm actually just going to do CLS. I'm going to quit, clear this because it shouldn't have failed, unless I when I did my Control C stuff, I mean when I was reverting everything back, I might have missed something. Don't think I did. Received, expect received, response to be null. Yeah, I mean that was the point here. Interesting. What if I did to be undefined? Undefined and null are kind of they're a little different, I think. So let me see what happens. Expect received to be null, and it actually seems like it's only looking at that first one. Reason being is probably if I were to switch this, I'm sure that the top one would say, but let's just do this to be undefined and see what happens, because it doesn't even exist. That's really the problem. Null means that property exists but it has no value. Undefined is when that thing just doesn't even exist. And there we go. So we can just do to be undefined. And the way we can test and make sure that this is working is we can go over to our user model and we can delete this part. We'll just comment this part out, and we'll see in a second that actually makes our test fail. Should make our test fail. Do this and just run it again. Interesting. Huh. I'm drawing blanks here. So I mean, I guess it is what it is. I mean, I can't actually get access to this thing. Oh, I see. This is what the problem is. Response dot body dot password. Response dot body dot tokens. And I think I already reverted this back to what it was. And there it is. So now we know that this is working, because when it was there, it was giving us the thing that we wanted. Now we're getting some issues, and that's how it's supposed to be. That means our test is working. We're seeing the results, and this will make sure that if we make any changes in the future, let's say we use like some kind of other token library or something like that, or if we scrap that function and put it somewhere else, we want to enforce that these are undefined when we send this information back to our client. because we don't want to expose ourselves. So that's our test here. I can't think of anything else to test here, because and then I want to check the user router again, because I think on the user router I might have removed something that I wanted. I removed the check for creating a duplicate. So I want to see if the mongoose unique will return a 209. Mongoose JS return 209. I mean 409. I'm sorry. So this is what I want to use here. And the way we can do this is I'm building blah blah blah. So they're using a different validator. I don't really care about that, to be honest. Trying to see their status codes though. I don't see that 409, so let me just do 409 and look for it here, somewhere else. The console log and the fetch handler is being enriched in the console wise in status 409 like I indicated. Is this the answer? Nope. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I want to return the 409. I wonder if you put unique, what'll happen on this thing. And I think I already have that in the model. So let's go and look at the model here. And we do have unique true here. So that's what rejects it. And then I guess the only way to do this, well, it just returns a 400, I guess. There's no real way to say it already exists. You know, you can go here and they'll tell you, typically you would use Mongo's validation. Validators don't support promises. So you can just create your own function. And this is one way to do it too. So I'm gonna throw that back in there, because I think I had it at first and then something, who knows, right? So and the only thing I need is the email. So what I want to do is I want to say, if, and then what we'll do is we'll say if, so we say const exists equals await user dot find one, and we're gonna say, wait, what was this? Find one. Oh, that find by credentials thing. I like that. What's this find by credentials do? Do I need both the name and the email? Oh, that's something different. Forgot. So the only thing we could do is we do find one, and we want to use the email, and this will be request.body.email. And if a user with that email already exists, we are not going to run this. So we say if request we say if exists, right? Then we are going to return response dot status 409 dot, and we'll send that off. and we'll say this this user um this user already exists, right? That's what you want to do there. That does kind of, I mean, when you think about it in terms of if somebody's trying to hack you by logging in with random stuff and you give them information, I guess this is kind of doing the same thing. So I don't want to do that with the credentials, I guess. You just, people do it all over, and you know, it's not to say people do it, but I mean, it happens. In terms of other, you know, relevant, reputable resources, they do this very thing. They expose, I don't say expose, but they say, hey, you know, that exists already, so you can't use that. And then the next thing that we want to do is, now that we've validated that, one, the response body has removed the password and the tokens from the response, and we verified that the user is in fact that the user has in fact been created and exists in our database, we are good to go on this test. Ooh, I didn't even realize I went over time. I'm gonna take maybe just a few more minutes to wrap this test suite up. It shouldn't take too much longer. So let's just look at the router here. We have this tested. That should be fine. Now we should, we have to do something for like invalid emails. So for each, you know, individual router here, or if you want to call it a function, you'd have multiple tests to assess different possibilities. So for instance, the first scenario is, you know, the working scenario, right? Then you want to test, you know, what can go wrong. Like, what are some things that can go wrong here? For instance, off the bat, that user can already exist. So we want to test to make sure we can get this. Then we have an event where maybe we're trying to save a user with some invalid credentials. Maybe they didn't add the email, or they're missing the name, something like that, some kind of required property. So we want to do that as well. And adding this unique thing onto the user model when when you're already doing that is a little bit redundant. So I just wanted to remove that. Because they don't, it's not like the database is validating it and sending back a response. It just prevents it from happening. And oh, I see why we do that. Because what happens is, what if somebody patches when they do a patch? So when we do a validator, this will run for the uniqueness to make sure that the email is in fact unique. So the next thing we want to do is say should not allow duplicate users, and we'll do async, and then we'll drop off this callback function, and then what we'll do here is we're going to do the exact same thing. And this time we're going to, so as you can see here, we have we're now about to duplicate what we're doing. So when you have that, when you see that is a thing, you might want to, that's when you know, okay, maybe I should create a function for that. So we'll create a function for that. So we're gonna have a constant, and that's gonna be create user, and we'll have it take in the we'll just do it like this. We'll say create new user, and then we'll let that be equal to, and this will be a synchronous thing going on here. And this is all we need. So we drop this in here. This is all we're going to do. We're going to actually do the same thing here. Control C, Control V, and I'm just going to pull this part off. I think I can do return. So we're going to return this, and then that's how we'll do it. Instead of creating a variable for this. So now what we'll do is we'll say const response equals create new user, and then we'll just drop that dot there, and just want to make sure this still works. And oop, we have a problem here. And I think the problem here is that I still have to do a wait for this. Create new user. Let's see if I pull this out. No, I don't need this. Do I need this? I don't think so. Nope. Response equals that, and then let's just say return response. I believe I have to await this again. So if this doesn't work, it's no biggie. I just wanted to see if there was a way I can keep myself from duplicating stuff. That doesn't seem to be the case here. So it was worth the try. Alright, so should not allow duplicate users. So, and the only thing we're going to do here is we already created this user 1 in here. So we're going to use that as our thing. And since we've already done this in our test, we don't have to verify that again. So that's really nice. So we're going to return our 409 error. And instead of putting in this, we're just going to put user 1. And user 1 is already an object, so that's why we're able to do that. And then look at that, both our tests passed. So we get that 409 that we were looking for. So we're now able to test that case. And then should not create users without create a user with missing should not create a user that is missing required fields. Missing a required field. And it'll be the same kind of thing. We're going to use our callback function. We're going to use async await. And in this particular case, we I mean, we can check to make sure that the user isn't in the database, but it's overkill. Well, I'm not gonna say it's overkill because we have seen in our test that we could get a 400 response and somehow the data still slipped up in the database. So what we can do is on this user one, we can assign our user one an ID, and the reason why we're going to assign it an ID is so that we can access that ID, um, and we can do our own thing on that. So we do new mongoose dot types dot object ID, right? And now we have that ID, and now we have our user one ID in here, and then you're gonna say that you say const and this is actually going to be an so we want to see an array, so we want to say we'll just call it matches, right? And then say equals await, right? User dot find by ID, and this time, well, actually I don't want to do find by ID, I want to say find one, and we're just I guess we don't need the ID just yet, but we'll need it later, so I'll leave it there. And we'll just say find user dot find, yeah, this is fine, and we want to find users by the email, and the email is going to be user one dot email, and this is going to give us an array, and then we can just say expect matches dot length. I believe it's just the dot. I think it's a property. I don't think it's a method on it because it's in a we see dot 2b, and we want that to be 1, and then we can save that. This test might fail because it doesn't have anything in it. Actually, it should pass. So there we go. So now we ran this, we got our error, and we are sure that we only have one of these users in our database. So it's getting pretty late, and tests can take quite a bit of time. Now that we're already here, we're good to go because we have everything set up. So we'll continue with this tomorrow, and the only thing I'm going to do before we leave is I'm going to commit my changes, because I mean, even though my Git isn't tracking some of these changes I have in terms of the dev and the test.env stuff, I still have the new changes that I made with the database that has now moved. The email subscriber stuff, we did add some new stuff up in there in terms of the cleanup. I think it was just simple stuff. We did modify index.js. We created this new app.js. We have our test directory in there. We made some slight modifications on the user router and on the subscriber model. And we added some new packages. So our package.json and our package lot.json has now been updated. So we're just going to push all of that to our database. I mean, to our GitHub. And then the only thing I have to do is now is write our commit message. So we need to git commit -m, and the git is really the save. It's like saving it to Git, because when you add it, it's tracking it, but it doesn't really save. And the thing about these commits is that these commits are like your backups, so you can use these gits to cycle through and get information. And I'll show you that in a second. Git commit, and we'll say tests set up set up let's say cleanup for subscriber and user router and user models routers began writing tests. So that is good to go. And then and then check this out. We can do git log and we'll see all of the commits we've ever made. Look at that. We can see where these coming from. Updated subscription information, clean up for subscriber, and oh, look at that. This is it. There may be more. I'm seeing one here. But I think it shows you up to a certain amount. So if I hit quit, that's it. That's all I needed to see there. And then I'm going to do git, I think it's -u push. And this just says upstream. Excuse me. Again, I forget how why you do that. But it is something you do. And there it goes. And dev branch. And then once we have these tests done, I'm going to show you guys how you can merge your branches, because as I said before, we have we have that master branch. We have that master branch in here. Where is it? Here. And we have this master branch that only has the commits that we made last week. On our dev branch, we have all of these different commits, and I wanted to see if we can go over to the commit. Oh, this one has 6 commits, and you can see all those commits right here, right? So that's cool, right? And then the only thing we want to do is we're going to take all of these changes that we've made, and I think there's a way that we can compare these. I think if I do it like this, compare. Hopefully, I don't want to do it yet, but I just want to see what's different, right? Because usually if there's a mismatch, you see it. Not a mismatch, but I wanted to just see that you can see the difference between the two. Branches. Alright, I can't get to it just yet. I forget how this works. It's been I don't actually use this. I use something else professionally. So oh, and look at this. We have different workflows we can do. So you can test your projects right here, actually. So this is stuff that I'm actually going to get into a little later. And this will be some stuff we're going to get into, because I know I'm going to have our I'm definitely going to use some AWS stuff because I'm using Lightsail. I don't think I need this container for yet, but again, I haven't used it yet, so that's actually what I'm going to do after I get all of the code built. And we have our test cases running, so we're good now. We've already pushed up to our development branch, and this is a good place to stop. So tomorrow we'll pick up from here. We should be able to run through at least the user and possibly the subscriber branches. I mean, not branches, those models and those routes. If it's a good day, we'll get through all of our models, and we'll be able to tie the knot there. If not, we'll definitely we should be wrapped up by Friday. So I'll see you guys then. Have a good evening, what's left of it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. So